So the deal is that it's sometimes very hard to find out who's having the emotion when you're like deeply empathetic, right? So I call empathy, it's like being with somebody without being in somebody. But oftentimes we find ourselves in somebody. So the classic example of this is that I had this CEO that I was working with, and super logical, and would just make these like really, really great arguments. And I would just buy into these arguments that they were making. And then one day I'm like, wait a second, that shit didn't make any sense. That shit didn't make any sense at all. And so I started doing the research, and I found out actually that people who are highly logical, very, very thoughtful people often are more logically inconsistent than people who aren't highly intellectual, and they have less of a capacity to see it. And I was like, wow, that's really strange, because they have a harder time emotionally feeling the inconsistency, is my theory. And so anyways, what was happening is they were very convicted to the thought. They really, really, really believed it. And I was empathizing, and I was like, yeah, I also feel your conviction. Yes, you must be right. And so I wasn't listening. And now I can see this all the time. I can see these very emphatic, very logical people making, and like watch news, you can see it, making these completely irrational, but everybody's buying in because they're empathetically, they bought in, they're in the other person. And so this happens in lots of different ways. For instance, somebody can be really anxious, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I wasn't nervous about that 10 minutes ago, and now I'm really nervous about that. And so in a relationship, this can be incredibly challenging, as you're finding out right now. Like, it can be incredibly challenging because you don't know where you begin and they end. Like, are they sad or are you sad? Like, what's actually happening here? So there's a great trick on this, which is just putting 10% of your attention, 20% of your attention in your body. As soon as you can feel your own system, so not all of your attention is in them, but you're attuning to yourself, then you can attune to them in a real way. When you're fully in them, you bought into their story, you've bought into their emotional experience, you're feeling their story, you're feeling the emotional experience. But if you attune to yourself, and then you can see them for what's actually going on. Oh, they're really convinced of this. Oh, they're illogical in this. Oh, they're really sad. And then you can actually be with them. You don't have to be in them. And the weird thing is that what I notice is that when people are bought into the story, like you see this all the time where like friends are saying, oh, he's such an asshole. And I was like, yeah, he's such an asshole. And they all kind of like nod. And then they walk away from the conversation. They might feel a little better for a little while, but like 10 of those conversations later, they all feel like shit all the time after these conversations. We've all had the friend that's like, I don't even want to go over to the friend's house because they're just going to bitch about the boyfriend again. It's like the same old routine story. Whereas if you're actually with them, oh, I see that you really think that they're an asshole. Oh, what's going on? Like, and being curious about that instead of buying into the story, then there's a lot more room for the transformation, which is what fighting is all about. Fighting is all about figuring out how you can transform together. And if you're in the person, it's very hard to see yourself. It's very hard to have any kind of transformation. So the other thing that happens is that oftentimes, as we talked about, you have this relationship, and usually one person's more logical. They feel like they're more right. And the other person is more emotional and they're more empathetic. That's a standard, not always, but it's a standard dynamic. And so that's how that works to some degree, is that the empathetic person is like, oh, they feel like they're right and I'm feeling them, so they must be right. Right? And so that's like part of the thing that makes it all so convoluted. So just putting some attention in yourself allows you to be in your own system. And this also helps you like calm your nervous system down when you're in the fight. Putting a little attention in yourself separates you from them in a way that allows you to actually be with them, and it calms your nervous system. So it's just like a really cool hack, especially for the empathetic people like you.